Welcome to the Dream Architect channel. Today we will journey into a quiet, sleeping epoch when the earth breathed more slowly and the shadows of giants walked its plains. We will follow the footsteps left millions of years ago, not to disturb their peace, but to listen to the silent music of time, to the lullaby the planet sang to itself. This will be a voyage into a world where the days were shorter and the air was thicker, a world that fell asleep long ago, leaving us only its dreams, frozen in stone. We will not speak of battles and roars, but of the slow dance of life, of majestic tranquility, and of how an entire era can quietly fade into darkness, leaving behind only a mystery. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. And now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy and your mind soften. Let us begin. There is a name, carved not in stone, but in the very fabric of time itself, a word that became a gateway to a lost world. That word is dinosaur. In the mid-19th century, the British paleontologist Sir Richard Owen, gazing upon the fragmented bones of colossal creatures unearthed across England, realized they belonged to no known group of reptiles, living or extinct. He combined two Greek words, Deinos, meaning not just terrible, but also fearfully great, or awe-inspiring, and Sauros, for lizard. Thus, a name was born for an entire era, for a kingdom that had slept beneath the earth for 66 million years. It was not merely a dry scientific term, but an act of poetic christening, an attempt by the human mind to give a name to something it could barely comprehend. And with that name, the echo of ancient life found its first true voice, a quiet whisper that we are still learning to hear today. And yet, the first of these whispers was caught long before it could be truly understood, mistaken for the bone of a biblical giant or a mythical beast. Long before the official discovery and naming, in 1677, a portion of a megalosaurus femur was unearthed in an English limestone quarry. Its true nature remained a profound mystery. Robert Plott, the keeper of the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford University, described it as the remains of a giant, perhaps one of those mentioned in ancient texts. A detailed drawing of this bone, published in his Natural History of Oxfordshire, became the first scientific illustration of a dinosaur fossil in history. But the world was not yet ready to accept the terrible, wonderful truth it represented. It was like a single musical note played in complete silence, a melody for which there was not yet an orchestra or an audience. It simply waited for its time, resting in the archives like a sleeping princess from an ancient fairy tale. This fairy tale began to take its modern shape when the world met Iguanodon, one of the very first dinosaurs to receive a scientific name. Its story began with a single tooth, found in the 1820s by Mary Ann Mantell, the wife of a country doctor and amateur geologist named Gideon Mantell. The tooth resembled an enlarged version of an iguana's, and this humble similarity gave the giant its name. The first reconstructions, based on scant evidence, depicted Iguanodon as a clumsy, four-legged lizard with a horn on its nose, much like a rhinoceros. Only later, after new finds in a Belgian coal mine, did it become clear that this horn was actually a conical thumb spike, and the dinosaur itself could move on two legs as well as four. In this way, the image of the ancient creature slowly emerged from the fog of misconception, like a sculpture that time gradually frees from excess stone. This stone, which holds the imprints of the past, was not always kind to its sleeping prisoners, and the act of becoming a fossil is a quiet miracle. The process of fossilization requires a perfect confluence of circumstances, a rapid burial away from the ravages of oxygen, scavengers, and bacteria. The organism must be covered by sediment, like mud or sand, which protects it from decay. Over millions of years, as layers build up, the pressure and mineral-rich water replace the organic material with stone, creating a perfect replica. It is estimated that far less than 1% of all dinosaurs that ever lived became fossils. The overwhelming majority vanished without a trace, their bodies simply returning to the earth, dissolving into the cycle of elements. Each discovered skeleton is not the rule, but the sublime exception, a winning ticket drawn from the lottery of oblivion, allowing us a momentary glimpse into the abyss of time. The time in which they lived was almost incomprehensibly long, stretching across 3 great acts of a geological drama. The Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs, lasted for about 186 million years, divided into the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods. For comparison, the entire history of our own species, Homo sapiens, is but a fleeting moment of a few 100,000 years, a final second on the clock of their reign. They saw continents drift and break apart, oceans form and disappear, and the very face of the planet change beyond recognition. Their world was dynamic and ever-shifting, a slow-motion ballet of creation and destruction, and they were its silent, majestic rulers for a span of time that our minds can scarcely encompass. Their kingdom did not just last, it endured. At the very beginning of this era, in the Triassic period, the land was united into one gigantic supercontinent, Pangaea. It was a world of harsh contrasts, with humid, monsoon-lashed coastal zones and vast, sun-scorched deserts in the continental interior, where temperatures could reach extreme highs. Dinosaurs then were not yet the titans of later ages, but were modest, nimble creatures sharing the planet with a host of other reptiles. One of the earliest, Eoraptor, was no larger than a fox, a swift bipedal carnivore darting through the undergrowth. It was just one of nature's many experiments, a tentative brushstroke before the great saga of giants was written. Pangaea was the cradle where their dynasty was born, a single planetary home from which they would later spread across the entire globe as it fractured. This global dispersal became possible when that single home began to slowly crack apart, like a vast sheet of ice on a thawing lake. The inexorable movement of tectonic plates split Pangaea into Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south, creating new seas and oceans that flooded the rifts between them. This geological ballet unfolded over tens of millions of years, isolating populations of dinosaurs from one another on newly formed continents. It was this very isolation that became the engine of their incredible diversity. On each new island continent, life took its own unique path, with evolution creating a spectacular array of forms and species, each perfectly adapted to its local conditions. Thus, a single founding family divided into countless branches, each telling its own story of adaptation and survival. And some of those stories were written in truly gigantic letters that could be read from a bird's-eye view. The sauropods, the long-necked giants, were the largest land animals to ever walk the earth, a living testament to the sheer potential of biological form. Argentinosaurus, one of the champions in this weight class, could reach up to 35 meters in length and weigh up to 100 tons, comparable to the weight of an entire herd of modern elephants or a small blue whale. Its footsteps must have shaken the ground, but it was not the tread of a conqueror, but the slow, meditative movement of a living mountain. These colossi were peaceful vegetarians, their lives dedicated to one simple, all-consuming ritual: the search for enough food to sustain their incredible bodies. To support such a body required a heart of almost unimaginable power, an organ perhaps the size of a small car, capable of pumping blood tens of meters up to the brain. The heart of a sauropod was a marvel of natural engineering, a powerful pump that had to generate immense pressure to drive blood up an impossibly long neck to a brain that was, in comparison to its body, quite small. Some scientists speculate that they may have had auxiliary hearts, or powerful muscular valves along the neck to aid this process, a series of booster pumps along the biological pipeline. Imagine that slow, powerful, rhythmic beat, a deep thrumming echo deep within a living cathedral of flesh and bone, a sound lost to time. Their bones, contrary to what one might expect, were not solid and heavy, otherwise they simply would not have been able to move their own mass. The skeleton of a sauropod, particularly its vertebrae, was permeated by a complex system of air sacs. similar to the pneumatic bones of modern birds. These cavities, called pneumatic foramina, significantly lightened the weight of the skeleton without compromising its structural integrity. This was an ingenious evolutionary solution that allowed them to reach their titanic sizes, a perfect fusion of strength and lightness. Their skeleton was not a monolithic fortress, but an airy yet strong structure, a masterpiece of biological engineering where power was combined with the elegance of a suspension bridge. The neck of Diplodocus, another famous sauropod, was so long that for a long time it was believed it held it vertically, like a giraffe, browsing on the tops of tall trees. However, later biomechanical studies showed that this would have required an implausibly powerful heart and an impossible amount of energy. It is more likely that diplodocids held their necks and tails horizontally, parallel to the ground, using them as a massive counterbalance. Their body was like a living suspension bridge, where the neck and tail were cantilevers, supporting the massive torso. They did not pluck leaves from the treetops, but rather, like a giant living vacuum cleaner, methodically grazed on low-growing vegetation over a huge area, barely needing to move their bodies from one spot. Their tails were not just a counterbalance, but also a formidable weapon and a means of communication. In some sauropods, like Apatosaurus and the aptly named Diplodocus, the tip of the tail was incredibly thin and long, composed of over 80 vertebrae, resembling a bullwhip. Biomechanical models suggest that with a sharp flick of such a tail, they could create a deafening crack, a sound that broke the sound barrier at over 1,200 decibels. This could have been a way to startle predators, for ritual combat between males, or to communicate with their own kind over long distances. Imagine the silence of a Jurassic forest, suddenly torn by this sharp, gunshot-like sound, a signal sent by a living creature the length of 3 school buses. But not all giants reached for the sky. Some were turned toward the earth, carrying armor worthy of mythical creatures. Stegosaurus, with its double row of large, bony plates along its back, looked like a living fragment of a Gothic cathedral walking through a fern prairie. For a long time, the purpose of these plates was a mystery. Were they armor? Or perhaps they served for thermoregulation? A network of grooves on the surface of the fossilized plates suggests they were filled with blood vessels, which supports the second version. In the morning sun, they could act as solar panels, warming the blood. And in the midday heat, as radiators, dissipating excess heat into the breeze. These plates were not just protection, but a complex, passive climate control system woven into the very architecture of the body. The brain of this armored giant was astonishingly small, only about the size of a walnut or a small plum. This profound discrepancy between the huge 30-foot body and the tiny brain gave rise to the persistent myth of a second brain in the pelvic region. Scientists did indeed find a cavity in the sacral part of the spine that was significantly larger than the cranial cavity, large enough to house a much bigger neural mass. However, this was not a brain, but most likely a glycogen body, a structure found in modern birds that serves as an energy reserve for the nervous system of the hind limbs and tail. Stegosaurus did not think with its back, but its body possessed its own, almost autonomous wisdom, a decentralized network of reflexes and responses. Its contemporary, Triceratops, wore an equally impressive, if not more so, adornment on its head. 3 formidable horns and a huge bony frill that flared out from the back of its skull. This frill could reach 2 meters in width, making its head one of the largest of any land animal. It not only protected the vulnerable neck from the teeth of predators like Tyrannosaurus, but also likely played an important role in social life. Like a peacock's tail, it could have served to display status, attract mates, or intimidate rivals. The intricate patterns of blood vessels on its surface hint that the frill could have been brightly colored, flushing with vibrant hues during ritualistic displays. It was a living canvas upon which the drama of prehistoric life unfolded. The bite force of Triceratops was phenomenal, thanks to powerful jaw muscles that attached to this very frill, giving it immense leverage. Its mouth was designed like a pair of giant shears, capable of cutting and grinding the toughest vegetation of the Cretaceous, including the thick, fibrous trunks of cycads and palms. Its teeth grew in tightly packed columns called batteries, and as the exposed teeth wore down, new ones from the column below immediately rotated into place. It was a perfectly tuned mechanism for processing plant matter, a perpetual machine running on the energy of the ancient sun, stored in leaves and stems that other herbivores could not touch. Triceratops was not just an herbivore, it was a living, mobile sawmill. Ankylosaurus, another armored giant, took the idea of defense to its absolute extreme, becoming a living fortress. Its body was covered from its eyelids to its tail with fused bony plates, knobs, and spikes called osteoderms, forming a solid shell. To complete this defensive panoply, the end of its tail was a massive bony club formed from several fused vertebrae and weighing over 100 pounds. A well-aimed swing of this club, powered by massive tail muscles, was capable of shattering the leg bones of even the largest predator, such as Tyrannosaurus, with a single devastating blow. Ankylosaurus was a slow and invulnerable tank of the Cretaceous period. It embodied a passive but indomitable force, the profound idea that the best battle is the one that is avoided entirely. But not all dinosaurs were giants locked in an arms race of size and armor. The Mesozoic world was also full of small, nimble creatures, such as Compsognathus. This dinosaur was the size of a chicken and weighed only about 3 kilograms. It was a fast, bipedal predator that hunted lizards, insects, and small mammals in the undergrowth of giant ferns. In the fossilized remains of one Compsognathus, the delicate bones of a small lizard, its last meal, were found preserved in its stomach cavity. These small hunters were the antithesis of the slow-moving giants, the embodiment of speed, agility, and nervous energy. They remind us that in the shadow of giants, there is always another life, no less. Rich and dramatic, playing out on a different scale. It was in this shadow, among the small carnivorous dinosaurs, that one of the greatest transformations in the history of life began. Their simple reptilian scales started to change. Some scales on their bodies elongated, becoming thin and thread-like, forming a primitive plumage often called dino fuzz, similar to the down of a baby bird. These were not yet feathers for flight. Rather, they served for insulation, helping these active animals maintain a constant body temperature in a world with fluctuating climates. This was the first timid promise of the sky, given to creatures that were still firmly planted on the ground. The dinosaurs began to dream of flight without even knowing it. The discoveries of exquisitely preserved feathered dinosaurs in the fine-grained lakebed sediments of Liaoning, China, have completely overturned our understanding of these animals. Fossils of creatures like Sinosauropteryx showed a halo of simple, downy filaments surrounding their skeletons, proving that feathers were widespread among theropods, the group of carnivorous dinosaurs that also includes the famous Tyrannosaurus. This does not mean that an adult T-Rex was covered in feathers like a chick, but it is quite possible that its young were covered in down for warmth. The image of dinosaurs ceased to be a monochrome gray and green. They acquired texture, softness, and perhaps even bright, iridescent colors. The world of dinosaurs became warmer and more vibrant. Some of these feathers eventually became more complex, developing a central shaft and branching barbs, acquiring the asymmetrical shape necessary for generating lift and enabling aerodynamic control. Microraptor, for example, a small dromaeosaur from China, had developed flight feathers not only on its forelimbs but also on its hind limbs. It resembled a small four-winged biplane. It likely could not flap its wings with enough power for sustained flight, but could glide from tree to tree, much like a modern flying squirrel or a sugar glider. This was one of nature's many beautiful and strange experiments on the path to true flight, a living prototype searching for its way into the open sky. And finally, there was Archaeopteryx, a creature long considered the quintessential transitional link between dinosaurs and birds. Found in the limestone quarries of Solnhofen, Germany, it possessed an amazing mosaic of features. It had fully formed asymmetrical flight feathers and wings like a bird, but also a toothed jaw, claws on its forelimbs, and a long bony tail like a small dinosaur. It was a living chimera that combined two worlds in one small body. Today, scientists know that it was not a direct ancestor of all modern birds, but rather a cousin, one of many feathered branches on a common evolutionary tree. But its image will forever remain a powerful symbol of this great transformation from earthbound reptile to master of the air. This profound transformation means that dinosaurs did not actually go completely extinct. One of their branches, a lineage of small feathered theropods, survived the great cataclysm and thrives to this day. Birds are the direct descendants of these dinosaurs. When you look at a sparrow on a branch, a pigeon in a square, or an eagle soaring on the thermals, you are looking at living dinosaurs, changed, diminished in size, but retaining their ancient blood and a vast legacy of anatomical features. Their hollow bones, their feathers, their complex respiratory system, their very posture, all of this is a heritage passed down from their giant ancestors. The great era did not end. It simply learned to fly and sing. Some of their non-flying relatives were also surprisingly bird-like in their behavior and anatomy. Deinonychus, a predator the size of a wolf from North America, possessed a large, sickle-shaped claw on the second toe of its foot. It held this claw raised off the ground while walking to keep it sharp, using it as a terrifying grappling weapon during a hunt. It was the study of Deinonychus in the 1960s by paleontologist John Ostrom that ignited the dinosaur renaissance, the paradigm shift that reimagined dinosaurs not as slow, cold-blooded lizards, but as active, warm-blooded, and intelligent animals, much more like birds than modern reptiles. Oviraptor, whose name ironically translates to egg thief, was long considered a villain of the Cretaceous. Its first skeleton was found near a clutch of what were assumed to be Protoceratops eggs, and paleontologists concluded it had died while trying to steal another's offspring. However, decades later, other oviraptor skeletons were found in the exact same posture, sitting protectively over nests. Inside one of the eggs from the original find, a tiny oviraptor embryo was discovered. It turned out they were not stealing eggs but were carrying parents, brooding their clutches with their feathered arms, just like modern birds. Thus, the supposed thief was posthumously exonerated and became a beautiful symbol of reptilian parental care. This care for offspring was characteristic of many other dinosaurs, suggesting complex social behaviors. Maiasaura, a large hadrosaur from North America, was even nicknamed the Good Mother lizard for this reason. Paleontologists discovered entire nesting colonies of Maiasaura with eggs, broken shells, and the skeletons of juveniles of various ages all found together. This suggests that the young remained in the nest for a long time after hatching, unable to fend for themselves, and the parents brought them food. Dinosaurs did not just lay eggs and abandon them to their fate. Many species formed families, cared for their young, and lived complex social lives that we are only just beginning to understand. Their eggs came in a fascinating variety of shapes and sizes, reflecting the diversity of the parents. The eggs of sauropods were generally large and round, like cannonballs or soccer balls laid in vast nesting grounds. The eggs of theropods, in contrast, were elongated and oval, often arranged in intricate spiral patterns within the nest. The largest known dinosaur egg is about 60 centimeters long and belonged to a giant oviraptorosaur, but even it is strikingly small compared to the size of the adult animal. This means that even the most gigantic dinosaurs began their lives as tiny, vulnerable creatures. Their growth was phenomenally fast. Over a few decades, they increased in size thousands of times, going from a creature the size of a cat to a living mountain. The color of their eggs could also vary, adding another layer of quiet beauty to their world. For a long time, it was believed that all dinosaur eggs were white, like those of most modern reptiles. But recent studies using advanced chemical analysis have shown that the shells of some non-avian dinosaur eggs contain pigments, protoporphyrin, and biliverdin. These are the very same pigments that color the eggs of modern birds in a wonderful spectrum of shades, from deep blues and greens to speckled browns. It is possible that a spotted or bluish coloration served to camouflage the eggs in the nest, protecting them from sharp-eyed predators. The world of dinosaurs is acquiring more and more color, even in the most unexpected and delicate details. But how did these creatures communicate across the vast, fern-choked landscapes, beyond visual signals and tail cracks? Some dinosaurs may have used the deep, resonant power of infrasound. Parasaurolophus, a hadrosaur, had a long, hollow, trombone-like crest on its head. Computer modeling of this intricate structure has shown that by exhaling air through its complex internal passages, it could produce low-frequency, booming sounds, largely inaudible to the human ear, but capable of traveling over vast distances. It was a language of deep vibrations, a language that could be felt in the chest rather than heard with the ears. In this way, herds could maintain contact, warn of danger, or call to mates, even when they were out of each other's sight. And at the center of this world of sounds and scents and colors stood the one whose name has become synonymous with the very word dinosaur. Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king. He was not the largest predator of all time, but his body was perfected into a devastatingly efficient killing machine. His skull, nearly 1.5 meters long, was not lightweight but massively built, designed to withstand colossal stresses. His bite force was the greatest among all land animals that have ever lived, powerful enough to crush the bones of its prey. This is not speculation. It is a fact confirmed by the puncture marks and crushed vertebrae found on the fossils of other dinosaurs like Triceratops and Edmontosaurus. His teeth were not just sharp, they were like serrated railroad spikes, thick, conical, and capable of piercing thick hide and shattering bone. If a tooth broke during a violent struggle, it was of little consequence, as a new one grew in its place. Over its lifetime, a Tyrannosaurus could go through hundreds of teeth, ensuring its mouth was a constantly renewing arsenal. But it was not just a mindless killing machine. Studies of its brain case show that it had highly developed olfactory bulbs, larger in proportion than almost any other animal. Tyrannosaurus lived in a world of smells. It could scent prey or carrion from kilometers away. Its world was woven from the complex aromas of fear, life, and death, carried on the Cretaceous wind. And what of his famously tiny forelimbs? For a long time, they were the subject of ridicule, seen as useless vestiges. But they too had a purpose. They were too short to reach the mouth, but they possessed powerful musculature, and their two-fingered hands could, by some estimates, hold a weight of several hundred kilograms. Perhaps they were used to hold struggling prey close to the body, or to help the massive multi-ton torso rise from a resting position on the ground. They were not a useless evolutionary joke, but rather a highly specialized tool, a small, curious detail in a vast and complex biological mechanism. Was Tyrannosaurus a pure predator or a scavenger? This debate has raged for decades among paleontologists. The truth, most likely, is that it was both, like most modern large carnivores. Its powerful legs suggest it was fast enough to pursue prey, at least in short bursts, but it would hardly have passed up the opportunity to feast on an already dead animal, bullying smaller carnivores away from a carcass. It was an opportunist, a king who did not disdain any food that could sustain its enormous body and fuel its rapid metabolism. It was the embodiment of the very essence of nature, pragmatic, terrifyingly efficient, and utterly devoid of human sentiment. But the tyrant king did not reign entirely alone. In the southern lands, another dynasty of giants carved its own bloody history into the rock. Meet Giganotosaurus, a carnivore from South America whose name means giant southern lizard. While Tyrannosaurus was a bone crusher, Giganotosaurus was a creature of slicing and bleeding. Its skull was longer and narrower, its teeth more like serrated knives than railroad spikes. It likely hunted in packs, or at least family groups, enabling them to take down the largest animals on the planet, the colossal sauropods like Argentinosaurus, with whom it shared its world. It was a different kind of terror, a death by 1,000 cuts, a story of cooperative hunting written in the southern hemisphere's sun-baked earth. And he was not the only great predator to challenge the throne. Spinosaurus, which lived in the river systems of North Africa, was possibly even longer than Tyrannosaurus, a true river monster. Its main feature was a huge sail of bony spines on its back, connected by skin and reaching almost 2 meters in height. But the most surprising thing about it is its lifestyle. The density of its bones, the shape of its conical teeth, the paddle-like tail, and the position of its nostrils high on its snout all indicate that it led a semi-aquatic life. It was a giant fisherman, hunting huge car-sized fish in the vast river deltas of the Cretaceous period. It was the king not only of the land but also of the water, a dinosaur-crocodile hybrid of nightmarish proportions. Its jaw was long and narrow, like a gharial's, studded with conical teeth perfectly suited for holding slippery prey. At the tip of its snout were pits that likely housed pressure sensors, allowing it to feel the movement of fish in murky water even without seeing them. It could move with surprising grace in the water, propelled by its powerful tail. Spinosaurus was the first, and perhaps the only, truly aquatic non-avian dinosaur we know of. It discovered a whole new world hidden beneath the surface of the rivers, a world of silent, deep water inaccessible to its purely terrestrial relatives. In the preceding Jurassic period, another super predator dominated the landscape, Allosaurus. It was smaller than Tyrannosaurus, but lighter, more agile, and arguably more common. Its skull was a fenestrated masterpiece, an airy construction of bones full of openings, which made it light but remarkably strong. Unlike Tyrannosaurus, its bite was relatively weak for its size. Allosaurus probably hunted by using its head like a hatchet, delivering powerful, rapid downward blows with its upper jaw and using its powerful neck muscles to tear flesh with its serrated teeth. It was a different strategy, a different philosophy of hunting, no less deadly and effective. Smaller predators, like the famous velociraptor, likely hunted in coordinated packs, similar to modern wolves or hawks. Their strength lay not in brute force, but in communication, strategy, and intelligence. That same sickle-shaped claw on their feet was their primary weapon, used to pin down and disembowel prey. But unlike what is shown in popular films, the real velociraptor was only the size of a turkey and was covered in complex feathers. Its fearsome image in popular culture is actually based on its larger, more powerfully built relative, Deinonychus. But even in its true, modest form, it was a smart and dangerous hunter, a small, feathered demon of the Cretaceous deserts of Mongolia. The world they inhabited was profoundly different from our own, a truly alien planet. In the Mesozoic era, particularly during the Cretaceous, the oxygen level in the atmosphere was significantly higher than it is today, possibly reaching 30 to 35% compared to our current 21%. This oxygen-rich air may have been one of the key factors that allowed dinosaurs to reach such gigantic sizes. It fueled their fast metabolism, allowed for more efficient respiration, and supported the immense energy demands of their bodies, allowing them to grow to limits that seem fantastic to us today. They breathed a different sky, an air that was thicker, denser, and perhaps more intoxicating. And the day itself was shorter then. Due to the Earth's faster rotation in the distant past, a day at the end of the Cretaceous period lasted about 23.5 hours, not 24. Consequently, the year consisted of approximately 372 days. This change seems insignificant, but over millions of years it speaks to a different planetary rhythm. Time itself flowed a little differently. Its cadence was slightly faster. The lives of the dinosaurs were subject to this accelerated cycle of day and night, of sunrises and sunsets that followed each other a little more quickly than we are accustomed to, a subtle but constant pressure on the rhythm of life. The vegetation of their world was also alien. The flowering plants, grasses, and broad-leaved trees that dominate our modern landscapes were scarce or non-existent for much of their reign. They were just beginning their evolutionary journey in the late Cretaceous. The landscape of the Mesozoic was woven from vast forests of giant ferns, towering horsetails, strange cycads that resembled squat armored palms, and coniferous trees like araucarias and ginkgos. It was a world of predominantly green, brown, and gray hues, a world of austere, almost architectural beauty, primal and raw. Flowers were a rare, precious, and recent inclusion, small bursts of revolutionary color in an ancient evergreen kingdom. Among these primeval plants were the ancestors of giant sequoias, whose lineage saw the dinosaurs rise and fall. These long-lived trees, which still grow in California today, are living witnesses to that bygone era. Their genetic memory holds the echoes of a world that has long since vanished. When you stand next to a giant sequoia, you are touching a living being whose kind dates back hundreds of millions of years, a silent contemporary of the giants. In the quiet rustle of its ancient needles, if you listen closely, you can almost hear the echo of an apatosaurus's footsteps or the distant cry of a pterosaur. But life was teeming not only on land. While dinosaurs ruled the earth, the oceans belonged to other groups of giant reptiles that were not dinosaurs but lived at the same time, sharing the Mesozoic stage. The plesiosaurs, with their long, serpentine necks, barrel-shaped bodies, and 4 powerful flippers, resembled the mythical Loch Ness monster. They moved through the water with a unique underwater flight motion, like giant marine birds. They were slow and graceful hunters, using their long necks to snatch fish from schools, their heads darting out like a striking snake. They were the serene, long-lived patrols of the ancient seas. Their neighbors in the marine realm were the ichthyosaurs, which bore a striking and almost perfect resemblance to modern dolphins or tuna. This is a vivid example of convergent evolution, where unrelated species independently acquire similar traits by adapting to similar lifestyles and environments. Ichthyosaurs were fast and agile predators, with streamlined bodies, powerful tails, and large eyes for hunting in deep water. They gave birth to live young in the water, just like marine mammals. They were so perfectly adapted to aquatic life that their bodies, frozen in stone, tell a story of the complete and triumphant conquest of the ocean by a lineage of land reptiles. At the end of the Cretaceous, a new and terrifying apex predator appeared in the seas, the mosasaur. These were giant marine lizards, closely related to modern monitor lizards and snakes. Some of them, like Mosasaurus hoffmanii, reached 17 meters in length, true sea dragons. With a powerful shark-like tail and jaws full of terrifying conical teeth, they were the tyrannosaurs of the ocean. Their dominance was absolute but shockingly short-lived. They appeared relatively late in the Cretaceous, rose to rule all the world's oceans, and then disappeared completely along with the dinosaurs in the Great Extinction. And above this entire world, in the thick, oxygen-rich heavens, soared the pterosaurs, flying lizards, which were also not dinosaurs but their close relatives. Their wings were a unique evolutionary invention, formed by a skin membrane called a patagium, stretched between the body, the hind limbs, and one incredibly elongated fourth finger. This was a completely different wing structure from that of birds or bats, a fourth way to conquer the air. They were the first vertebrates to master active, powered flight, taking to the skies long before the first birds appeared. Among them were tiny, sparrow-sized anarognathids with wide, frog-like mouths that hunted insects at dusk, and true giants that defy belief. Quetzalcoatlus, named after the Aztec feathered serpent god, was the largest flying creature of all time. Its wingspan reached a staggering 11 meters, comparable to a small modern airplane. When it stood on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe, stalking its prey on all fours like a giant winged stork. For a long time, it was a mystery how such a huge creature could take off. Modern theories suggest that it used its powerful forelimbs for a powerful, vaulting leap push that launched its massive, lightweight body into the air. The bodies of pterosaurs were not covered in scales or feathers, but in a unique, fine, hair-like covering called pycnofibers. These filaments served for insulation, providing strong evidence that pterosaurs, like many dinosaurs, were warm-blooded and had a high metabolism to power their flight. Their world was a world of active, energetic animals, not the sluggish, cold reptiles once imagined by early paleontologists. The Mesozoic sky was filled not with a heavy silence, but with the rustle of leathery wings and the strange, sharp cries of these amazing and diverse creatures. Dinosaurs inhabited all continents, including the southernmost one, Antarctica. In the Mesozoic era, Antarctica was not the icy, desolate desert it is today. Due to continental drift, it was located closer to the equator, was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, and was covered with lush, temperate, and even subtropical forests. It was home to its own unique species of dinosaurs, such as Cryolophosaurus, a predator with a bizarre, forward-curving crest on its head that earned it the nickname Elvisaurus. The discovery of dinosaurs in Antarctica definitively confirmed that they were distributed across the entire planet, having mastered a wide variety of climatic zones, from warm tropics to cool, dark polar winters. The color of dinosaurs was, for a long time, a matter of pure speculation and artistic license. But recent discoveries have allowed us to peer into this lost, vibrant world. By studying the fossilized remains of feathers under powerful scanning electron microscopes, scientists discovered preserved melanosomes, microscopic capsules that once contained the pigment melanin. The shape and arrangement of these melanosomes in modern birds are directly responsible for specific colors. By comparing fossil melanosomes with modern ones, scientists have been able to reconstruct the coloration of some dinosaurs. For example, the small feathered dinosaur Anchiornis was colored black and white with spangles and had a dramatic russet crest on its head, like a woodpecker. Even non-feathered dinosaurs could have had complex patterns on their skin. An exquisitely preserved fossilized skin impression of an Edmontosaurus, a type of hadrosaur, nicknamed Dakota, preserved not just the texture of the scales but also traces of broad stripes on its tail and limbs, perhaps like a zebra's. These patterns could have served for camouflage, breaking up the animal's outline in the dappled light of a forest, or for social recognition within a herd. The world of dinosaurs, which we used to imagine in drab shades of gray and green, may have actually shimmered with all the colors of the rainbow, with stripes, spots, and bright display patches used for communication. Some dinosaurs were creatures of the night, their lives unfolding under the light of a slightly larger moon. A small theropod from the Mongolian desert named Shuvuya had enormous eyes in proportion to its skull, similar to an owl's, granting it excellent night vision. It also possessed an exceptionally long inner ear canal, suggesting it had extremely sensitive hearing, perfect for detecting the faint rustle of small prey in the darkness. Its forelimbs were very short but strong, with a single large claw, and were possibly used for digging up termite mounds or other insect nests. Shuvuya was a nocturnal ghost of the deserts, a creature that came alive when the giants of the day fell asleep and the world grew quiet. There were also dinosaurs that sought refuge beneath the earth, digging their own homes. The remains of a small herbivore named Oryctodromeus were found at the end of an underground tunnel in Montana that it had obviously dug itself. The remains of an adult and two juveniles were found together in the terminal chamber of the burrow. They likely used these dens to hide from predators or from harsh weather conditions, such as extreme heat or cold. This is yet another proof of the amazing diversity of their behavior and their ability to adapt to a wide variety of conditions, even by retreating from the world and going underground. The tracks of dinosaurs, frozen in mud that later turned to stone, tell us as much about their lives as their bones do. These are called trace fossils, or ichnofossils. They can tell us about the speed of movement, whether the dinosaur walked on 2 or 4 legs, and about its gait and posture. Series of parallel trackways show migration routes and herding behavior, while clusters of tracks from different individuals in one place speak of social gatherings. They are frozen moments from their daily lives, the literal footprints of creatures that walked this earth long before us, a direct connection to their movement and behavior. Some of these tracks reveal moments of high social drama. At a site in Australia, a vast rock platform with thousands of fossilized footprints, named the Lark Quarry Dinosaur Stampede, has been found. The traditional interpretation presents a dramatic scene where a huge herd of small herbivorous dinosaurs was frightened into a chaotic stampede by the sudden appearance of a large predator. It is a dramatic freeze frame, capturing a single moment of terror and panic, preserved in stone for nearly 100 million years. The stone remembers not only the shape of bones, but also the echoes of ancient emotions. Coprolites, the scientific term for fossilized dinosaur droppings, are another invaluable and surprisingly intimate source of information. Their careful analysis allows us to learn precisely what an animal ate. In the coprolites of predators, fragments of crushed bones and scales are found, and in the coprolites of herbivores, we find the undigested remnants of specific plants, pollen, and even pieces of wood. This may not be the most glamorous area of paleontology, but it allows us to look directly inside the digestive system of ancient giants and reconstruct the intricate food chains of their lost world with remarkable clarity. Gastroliths, or stomach stones, are also frequently found with the remains of some dinosaurs, especially large herbivorous sauropods and ceratopsians. They deliberately swallowed stones, which then, in a muscular part of the stomach similar to a bird's gizzard, help to grind down tough, fibrous plant food, acting like the stones in a mill. These stones, often polished to a smooth, glossy shine by millions of years of gentle grinding in a giant's stomach, are silent witnesses to a hidden digestive process, a solution to the problem of eating food that was difficult to chew. The lifespan of dinosaurs varied dramatically depending on their size and metabolism. Small dinosaurs probably lived for only a few years, much like modern birds or small mammals of a similar size. But the giant sauropods, with their slower metabolisms, could live for a very long time, perhaps up to 100 years or even more, similar to modern giant tortoises or bowhead whales. Their lives were slow, measured, and long. Their bodies built for a marathon, not a sprint. They were the ancient patriarchs of their time, living monuments that saw the passing of many generations of other, faster-living creatures. The diseases of dinosaurs also left their sorrowful marks on their bones for us to read. Paleopathologists, specialists in ancient diseases, find clear evidence of arthritis in worn-out joints, of painful bone infections like osteomyelitis, and even of cancerous tumors. On the jaw of one famous Tyrannosaurus skeleton, a series of smooth-edged holes were found that are thought to have been caused by a parasitic infection similar to trichomoniasis, which affects modern birds of prey and can be fatal. They suffered and ailed, just like any other living beings. Their majestic appearance concealed a vulnerability inherent in all life. Injuries from battles and accidents are also recorded forever in their fossilized bone. Many predator skeletons bear the marks of healed rib or leg fractures, evidence of a violent and dangerous life. On the skull of one Triceratops, there is a distinct bite mark from a Tyrannosaurus that pierced the bony frill but then healed over, leaving a smooth scar in the bone. This means the Triceratops survived the terrifying attack and lived on for years afterward. Bones preserve not only the history of death, but also the history of survival, of incredible resilience, persistence, and the quiet power of healing. There were also dinosaurs that, in times of stress, fed on their own kind. Cannibalism was surprisingly common, for example, in Majungasaurus, a large predator from the island of Madagascar. On the fossilized bones of Majungasaurus, paleontologists have found tooth marks that perfectly match the shape, size, and spacing of the teeth of other Majungasauruses. In the harsh, seasonal conditions of ancient Madagascar, when other food was scarce, they did not shy away from their own kin. It was a brutal but effective survival strategy in a world of limited resources, a dark chapter in their long story. Some dinosaurs were exceptionally intelligent, at least by reptilian standards. Troodon, a small bird-like theropod from North America, had the largest brain-to-body size ratio of any known non-avian dinosaur. Its brain was comparable in proportion to that of modern flightless birds such as an ostrich or an emu. It had large, forward-facing eyes, which provided excellent binocular vision and depth perception for hunting in low light. Troodon was likely a fast and agile nocturnal or crepuscular hunter, relying not only on its sharp claws and teeth, but also on its cunning and superior senses. Dinosaurs could have had a wide range of body temperatures and metabolic strategies. The giant sauropods likely possessed a state called gigantothermy, or inertial homeothermy. Their enormous bodies heated up and cooled down very slowly, maintaining a relatively stable internal temperature simply due to their sheer mass, like a huge living vat of hot water. Smaller, more active dinosaurs, especially the feathered theropods that were ancestors to birds, were likely truly warm-blooded or endothermic, generating their own heat internally, just like modern birds and mammals, which allowed for a much more active lifestyle. Many species of dinosaurs lived in vast herds, sometimes numbering in the thousands or even tens of thousands of individuals. This is evidenced by mass bone beds, where countless animals died together, and by extensive fields of trackways showing huge groups moving in the same direction. Such behavior provided protection from predators. It is easier to get lost in a large crowd and harder for a predator to single out an individual. It could also be related to epic seasonal migrations over hundreds of kilometers in search of fresh food and water, following the ancient rhythms of the planet's seasons. They moved across the land in huge, thundering rivers of life. The young of many dinosaurs grew at an incredibly fast rate, a biological necessity in a dangerous world. The study of cross-sections of their bones, which, like tree rings, show annual growth cycles, has revealed that a young Tyrannosaurus, for example, could gain up to 2 kilograms of weight per day during its teenage growth spurt. This explosive growth required a huge amount of food and a high-revving metabolism. A dinosaur's youth was a short but very intense period, a frantic race to achieve a size that would grant it a measure of safety from predators. Pachycephalosaurs, or thick-headed lizards, had one of the most bizarre features in the dinosaur kingdom: an unusually thick, dome-shaped skull, which in some species reached 25 centimeters in thickness. For a long time, it was thought that they used their heads as battering rams, butting each other in battles for females or territory, like modern bighorn sheep. However, the spongy bone structure of the skull was not well suited for absorbing strong, direct impacts. A more recent theory suggests they may have used their heads for display, or perhaps for flank-butting their rivals, rather than dramatic head-on collisions. Therizinosaurus was one of the strangest dinosaurs ever discovered, a creature that seems to defy classification. Despite being a member of the theropod group, which is dominated by carnivores, it appears to have been an herbivore, with a small skull and leaf-shaped teeth. But its most striking feature was the giant, scythe-like claws on its forelimbs, which reached a staggering 1 meter in length. These are the longest claws of any known animal in Earth's history. Their purpose remains a profound mystery. Perhaps it used them to pull high branches towards its mouth, or for a terrifying defense against predators. Therizinosaurus looked like a creature from a dream, assembled from the parts of different animals. In the windswept plains of Argentina, the remains of what may be the largest land animal ever to live, Patagotitan majorum, have been found. It is estimated that this sauropod could have weighed around 70 tons and reached 37 meters in length. One of its fossilized femurs was taller than an adult human. It is almost impossible to imagine such a creature alive, moving under its own power. It was not just an organism, but an entire mobile ecosystem. Its skin was likely home to countless parasites, and it was probably followed by smaller animals that fed on its waste or the creatures it disturbed as it moved. It was a walking island of life. Some dinosaurs could swim, even if they were not primarily aquatic. A remarkable set of tracks found in Spain shows a large theropod, possibly a spinosaurid, swimming along the bottom of a shallow lake or river, touching the bottom only with the tips of its toes to propel itself forward. The tracks show it was moving against a current, its body swaying from side to side. This proves that rivers and lakes were not insurmountable obstacles for many dinosaurs, and they could cross them by swimming when necessary, allowing them to disperse across their landscapes even more effectively. The teeth of hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs, were among the most complex and efficient dental systems in the entire animal kingdom. They did not have individual teeth in sockets, but rather several hundred small teeth tightly packed together into so-called dental batteries. These batteries formed a single, broad, grinding surface that was constantly being replaced from below as it wore down from chewing tough plant material. This was a perfect, self-sharpening mechanism for grinding down tough vegetation like conifer needles and twigs, more efficient than the teeth of many modern herbivorous mammals like cows or horses. Not all dinosaurs were giants that shook the earth. The smallest known non-avian dinosaur may have been a creature called Oculudentavis, found preserved in a 99-million-year-old piece of Burmese amber. Its delicate skull was only 1.5 centimeters long, with large, lizard-like eye sockets. At first, it was mistaken for a tiny, primitive bird, but its true identity later became a subject of intense scientific debate. Nevertheless, it shows that the world of dinosaurs also included, by their standards, almost microscopic creatures that occupied their own tiny ecological niches, perhaps hunting insects in the bark of ancient trees. Were the dinosaurs doomed even before the asteroid fell from the sky? Some studies of the fossil record suggest that their biodiversity, the total number of different species, had already begun to decline several million years before the end of the Cretaceous period. Perhaps long-term climate change, massive and prolonged volcanic activity in India, and the slow regression of shallow seas had already put their ecosystems under stress, making them more fragile. The asteroid, in this view, was not the sole cause, but the final decisive blow that finished off an already weakened and fading world. Their world was dying slowly, not in a single fiery moment. And then, 66 million years ago, this long, slow fading came to its fiery and abrupt end. An asteroid the size of Mount Everest, about 10 kilometers in diameter, slammed into the Earth in the area of the modern Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It was traveling at a speed of thousands of kilometers per hour. The impact released energy billions of times greater than the power of all the atomic bombs on the planet combined. It was an event of cosmic scale, a violent interruption that changed the course of life on Earth forever and in an instant. Directly at the impact site, in a flash of unimaginable heat and pressure, all life was instantly vaporized. The shockwave triggered giant tsunamis hundreds of meters high that swept across the planet's coastlines, and earthquakes of a magnitude never experienced by humans. Red-hot debris rained back down from the sky, igniting global firestorms. But the most terrifying consequence was what happened next. A huge amount of pulverized rock, dust, soot, and sulfur was ejected into the high atmosphere, forming a dense, dark blanket that enshrouded the planet and blocked out the sun for many months, perhaps even for several years. An impact winter began. Without sunlight, photosynthesis on land and in the oceans stopped almost completely. Plants and phytoplankton died on a massive scale, and with them the entire food web began to collapse. The herbivorous dinosaurs, even the largest among them, had nothing left to eat. Following the herbivores, the predators also went extinct, deprived of their prey. Food chains that had been stable for millions of years unraveled in a matter of months. It was a time of cold, darkness, and starvation, a time when gigantic size became not an advantage, but a fatal death sentence. A large body needs a lot of food, and there was no more food to be found. Only those who were small, adaptable, and had the right kind of lifestyle survived this global catastrophe. Small mammals, hiding in burrows and feeding on whatever they could find. Carrion, insects, roots. Birds, whose dinosaur ancestors had already learned to fly and could travel long distances in search of scarce food sources. In the water, crocodiles and turtles, whose slow, cold-blooded metabolism allowed them to go for very long periods without eating. The extinction was brutally selective. It destroyed the magnificent giants and cleared the way for the small and inconspicuous to inherit the Earth. The impact site, the Chicxulub crater, is now hidden from view, buried beneath a thick layer of younger sediment and the shallow waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Its full circular structure, about 180 kilometers in diameter, was only mapped in the late 20th century using geophysical data. Its discovery became the final decisive evidence for the impact theory of extinction, the smoking gun for the crime of the Cretaceous. It is a vast, invisible scar on the face of the planet, a silent memorial left on the day the world of the dinosaurs died. But even after this devastating impact, some dinosaurs may have clung to life for a while. In a few parts of the world, their fossilized bones are found in rocks just above the geological layer that marks the catastrophe. Perhaps small, isolated populations survived in sheltered refuges for a few hundred or a few thousand more years, like the last representatives of a doomed royal lineage, living out their final days in a new, hostile world that no longer belonged to them. They were living ghosts, the last fading echoes of a bygone era. The iridium anomaly is a thin, dark layer of clay found all over the world in geological deposits that are precisely 66 million years old. This layer is unusually rich in the element iridium, a metal that is very rare in the Earth's crust but common in asteroids and comets. It is the irrefutable chemical fingerprint of that cosmic catastrophe, a global boundary marker separating the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs, from the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals. It is a thin, dark line drawn with cosmic dust in the great history book of the Earth. Thus ended their reign, which had lasted for an almost unimaginable 186 million years. They disappeared to make way for a new chapter in the history of life, a chapter in which our own tiny, shrew-like mammalian ancestors were destined to emerge from the shadows and play the leading role. Their extinction was a profound tragedy for them, but it was a world-changing opportunity for us. Without this extinction, the world might still belong to them, and mammals might have remained small, nocturnal creatures, forever scurrying in the shadows of giants. But their story does not truly end with extinction. It continues in every stone that holds their bones, in every trackway etched into ancient mud. Paleontology is a kind of slow, patient dialogue with time, an attempt to decipher messages left millions of years ago. Each new fragment found, each tooth, each vertebra, each feather impression is a new word in this endless story, a word that clarifies, supplements, or sometimes even completely changes our understanding of their lost world. The story is still being written, bone by bone. Their legacy lives on not only in the birds that fill our skies, the iron in our blood, the calcium in our bones. All these elements were forged in the heart of the same stars as the elements that made up the bodies of the dinosaurs. We are made of the same stardust, breathed the same air, and walk on the same planet. In the most fundamental sense, we are their distant relatives in a single, unbroken cosmic lineage of life. Their story is an integral part of our story, the grand, sprawling story of life on this small blue planet. They remind us of how fragile and contingent life can be, even the most powerful and successful. An entire world, a global ecosystem that thrived for millions upon millions of years, can be undone by a random event from the depths of space. It is a profound lesson in cosmic humility, a quiet reminder that our own existence is not a given, but a precious and perhaps temporary gift, a lucky break in the grand, indifferent lottery of the universe. Their images continue to live in our culture, in our dreams, in the fertile imaginations of our children. They have become a permanent symbol of something ancient, mighty, and beautifully incomprehensible. They are the dragons of the real world, a myth that turned out to be breathtakingly true. They stir our imagination because they show us the boundless potential of life, how diverse, strange, and magnificent it can be when given enough time. Their fossils are not just bones, they are veritable time machines. When a paleontologist carefully cleans a dinosaur bone from the surrounding rock with a fine tool, They are touching a creature that last saw the light of the sun 66 million years ago. It is a physical touch across the unfathomable abyss of time, a moment of profound and silent connection between two completely different worlds, two different states of the Earth. In the windswept flaming cliffs of the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, an astonishing fossil duo was found, a velociraptor locked in a death struggle with a protoceratops. The predator had plunged its sickle claw into the herbivore's neck, while the latter, in turn, had clamped its powerful beak-like jaws on the attacker's arm, breaking the bone. At that very moment, a collapsing sand dune buried them both alive, preserving this dramatic scene for eternity. It is a frozen frame from a violent ballet, a battle that never ended and will never end. The study of dinosaurs is a continuous, dynamic process of discovery. A new species is described on average almost every week. Our knowledge of them is constantly growing, evolving, and being revised. What we think we know today is only a small part of what we have yet to learn. The great book of their history is far from complete. We have only read the first few introductory chapters. The greatest discoveries may still lie hidden, waiting beneath the earth. Their world was a loud one, full of sounds we will never hear. The deep, resonant booming of Parasaurolophus crests, the sharp, supersonic whip cracks of Diplodocus tails, the strange, guttural cries of pterosaurs circling in the sky, and, of course, the ground-shaking roars of great predators. But today, their world is utterly quiet. It is a world of deep, profound silence, a world of petrified dreams and sleeping giants. And in this silence, there is its own deep, tranquil, and solemn beauty. They remind us of the vast, cyclical nature of time. Eras are born, they flourish, and they fade, giving way to new ones in an endless procession. Their story is not an end, but just one part of the infinite cycle of destruction and creation that is the essence of the universe. Their bones, returned to the earth, are like the seeds from which new worlds have grown, the fertile ground upon which our own age was built. Perhaps one day we will be able to learn even more about them, perhaps by deciphering fragments of proteins or other biomolecules preserved deep within their fossils. This idea still resides on the very edge of scientific possibility, but it beckons us with the dream of truly resurrecting their world, at least in digital form. To look into their eyes and see the reflection of a sky, a sun, and a landscape that no longer exists anywhere but in stone and memory. They were the absolute pinnacle of evolution for their time, perfectly and wonderfully adapted to their environment. They were not a failed experiment of nature, not clumsy, doomed beasts. They were kings, and their reign was longer and more stable than that of any other dominant class of animals on land in the history of the planet. Their story is not one of failure, but one of unprecedented success, a dynasty interrupted only by a cosmic accident of the highest order. Their bones, buried deep underground, have over time turned into more than just stone. Under immense pressure and temperature, their organic remains, along with the plants they ate, became part of the vast coal, oil, and natural gas deposits that we use today. In a very real and tangible sense, the energy that powers our cities and our modern lives is the stored energy of the Mesozoic sun, which was absorbed millions of years ago by ancient plants that were eaten by dinosaurs. We live by the ghostly subterranean light of their departed world. And so the history of the giants dissolves into the deep geology of the planet, into the fluttering flight of a common bird, into the very air we breathe. Their time has passed, but their echo is woven into the very fabric of our world, a constant, silent reminder of the fragility and the grandeur of life, of the endless, beautiful cycles of fading and rebirth. They sleep an eternal sleep beneath our feet, and their profound peace is now part of the ancient peace of the planet itself. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. And now, just breathe. Let your eyes grow heavy, and may the quiet shadows of forgotten giants lull your thoughts. Good night.